Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Kyushu Roundtable. This is not a presentation, it's an exchange of ideas and experiences with you and our panel and myself and the information that we have through Fukuoka Now. So begin with a quick self-introduction. My name's Nick Szasz, I'm from Canada, and I've lived here in Fukuoka for a long time. And my business is Fukuoka Now. It's a publishing company. We've been publishing information about Fukuoka for foreigners since 1999. It started as a printed magazine, free paper, published every month for 256 months until the pandemic, and that's when we stopped printing in paper, but we still continue to share information online, on our website and social media and all that. And we have a newsletter, which I highly recommend you subscribe to if you don't already. So we're going to use some of the contents from Fukuoka Now this evening. We share local news stories every day. We scan the local news media for stories that we think are interesting, that could be helpful to you guys, to everyone else. Before I go any further, let me introduce our panelists this evening. We have Evan Kirby.
Hello.
Evan Kirby, he's the founder of Genki Japanese and Cultural School. All right?
Hey.
A little applause, please. Applause, please. Yes. And you're returning champion, I should mention. This is Evan's second time. And for the first time, but also very popular, Sam Cushman. And Sam Cushman is a MEX scholar, Graduate School of Integrated Sciences for Global Society, Kyushu University. And Sam, you're from the States?
Yes, I'm from a small state of 3 million people called Arkansas.
Ah.
Yeah, so I have Scottish family on my on one side and French Canadians on the other.
Okay, so we can friendly. So we're friends.
Absolutely.
Okay, right. The first part we call Kyushu News Flash, and I'm going to go over a couple of news stories, and then we're going to ask our panelists to comment on that, and then actually open the floor to everybody here and see if we get a discussion going. Okay, so the first news story. Housing support for families. Fukuoka City has launched a new housing support program starting April 1st, offering subsidies of up to 1.25 million yen for families with children who relocate within the city. That includes up to 1 million yen towards home purchases and up to 500,000 yen for rental support. And notably, there are no income limits. The goal is to help families stay in the city despite rising housing costs, but it also signals something more structural. Affordability is becoming a real issue, even in a city that has long marketed itself as livable. Next, this one I thought was kind of surprising. A new junior high school opens in Nishi Ward near Kyudai Gakuten Toshi Station. Fukuoka has opened its first new public junior high school in 18 years. The area has seen rapid population growth with more than 4,000 new residents over the past decade, leading to overcrowding at existing schools. The new campus is designed to absorb that pressure, but more broadly, it's a reminder that growth is no longer theoretical. It's now affecting everyday systems like education and local infrastructure. Here's another interesting story. Foreign nursing trainees. In Fukuoka, 7 foreign trainees from Indonesia and Myanmar have passed the nursing assistant exam after about 2 years of working and studying under a prefectural support program. They are now working in medical institutions in Omuta. It's small in scale, but it reflects a growing reliance on structured foreign labor pathways, especially in sectors like healthcare, where shortages are expected to intensify. Next, this photo was taken very near to here. Tenjin redevelopment impact. Fukuoka's Tenjin Big Bang, everyone's heard of that, of course. Redevelopment is now projected to generate about 1.9 trillion in economic impact, more than double earlier estimates from 2015. The number of redevelopment projects has also increased significantly, with a total floor space reaching over 500,000 square meters. And next. Oita Airport hovercraft tourism. In Oita, a new hovercraft sightseeing service will launch from the airport, offering short 30-minute cruises aimed at inbound travelers, particularly those with time between departures. The service is limited for now, but the idea is strategic, turning waiting time into a tourism opportunity. It reflects a broader shift towards experience-based tourism, where value is created through unique offerings rather than just increasing visitor numbers. In contrast, the Heisei Chikuho Railway in Fukuoka Prefecture will be discontinued and replaced by a bus-based system, following the decision by 9 municipalities and the prefecture after years of declining ridership. The railway serves rural areas and maintaining its projected cost around 11 billion yen over 30 years. The switch to buses is cheaper, but it also reflects a difficult reality. In parts of Kyushu, population decline is forcing a step back from rail infrastructure. I think we have two more. One more. Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise as well. Amyu Plaza to open in Tenjin. JR Kyushu plans to open a new Amyu Plaza retail complex in Tenjin by redeveloping the existing Bioro building, with a target opening of 2027, so that's just next year. This will be the first Amyu Plaza located outside a railway station. The move reflects intensifying competition in central Fukuoka, where multiple development projects are underway. It also shows how established brands are adapting to a changing urban landscape and not just expanding in traditional formats. And our last story, very close to us. In fact, this is where we are now, One Fukuoka Building. SoftBank has announced it will consolidate its 3 Fukuoka offices into the One Fukuoka Building in Tenjin, bringing around 700 employees into a single location. This will make it one of the company's largest bases in Japan, outside Osaka. And the move centralizes operations like sales and technical teams and reinforces Fukuoka's role as a regional hub. And it's another indicator that major companies are deepening their presence here, not just maintaining it. So those are our Kyushu News Flash. This is just a sample of what's happened in the last month since our last event here. And I'd like to call on our panelists here to give us their take on 2 of these stories each. And I think we're going to start with, did I say, Evan?
Yep.
Evan, what caught which of these stories?
Well, this one specifically,
right here?
Housing support for families. As Nick alluded to in the introduction, this is a policy that is partly implemented by the city to reduce increasing housing costs, especially for families with young children. But luckily, it isn't a requirement that people have low income or that people are struggling in any way to accept this. And so I'm hoping that somebody here today will turn out to be eligible for this policy. Basically, I'm hoping we can save somebody 70 man today. So the conditions for this are that you have children, or even that you are pregnant, and that you move house, that you already live in Fukuoka City, and that you move house this year. That's basically it. There are other things, such as that you're not part of a Bodoku Dantai, that you're not in the Yakuza.
Not currently.
Not currently. Yeah, they don't talk about past, yeah. And there are specific districts that you are not allowed to move into, or that you're not eligible for the supplemental money if you move into. And this is if the schools in those areas are already full. But as long as you're not moving into one of those and you apply within the next year, then basically you're eligible for, as Nick said, if you're moving in from a rental to a rental, you can get 10 man a year, 100,000 yen a year for 5 years. If you're buying a house, you can get 200,000 yen a year for 5 years. And these are relatively large sums of money. And they'll also pay for moving expenses. So half of all of your moving costs. I mean, they say all costs, they mean all of it. They include things like registration fees, agent fees, key money, guarantor fees, all of these Japanese fees that make it so expensive to move. They'll pay for half of this. They'll pay for packing and unpacking your appliances, moving company fees. They specifically say they won't pay for tips to friends who help you move. That's how unrestricted this is. That's the only thing not on the list. And so it's a really good opportunity. Basically, if you meet these requirements, you should apply for this. I called them to check, and there are, of course, no restrictions against foreigners using this policy. Fukuoka Now has a link to the policy, to the city government on their website, I think. And so definitely give it a check if you think you might be eligible. Thank you.
That's great. Sounds great. Okay, Sam, which stories did you cut your eye?
Yes, the Tenjin redevelopment impact hits 1.8 trillion yen.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Good, great photo. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Sam Cushman. I'm with Kyushu University. One of the things I'm going to attempt to do tonight is try to bring, from an academic perspective, apply a theoretical lens to some of the events that are kind of going on underneath the headlines, so to speak. And my goal tonight is perhaps to give you some categories or concepts to think in so that you can kind of better understand at a broader abstract level what's going on kind of behind the urban process, behind the city process. So specifically my field is urban geography, and the urbanization process has a lot of profound implications for the geography and layouts of cities. And so one of the things that caught my eye with this were two key sentences. One, you mentioned that there are now 57 structures planned compared to the original 30. And then interestingly enough, employment grew modestly to around 60,000 jobs as productivity gains through digitalization and limited workforce expansion. And so what stands out to me most in this article is not so much the trillion yen, 1.9 trillion yen impact, but it's the fact that more buildings are being reworked. Although economic impact rises dramatically, employment rises more modestly. And so growth is not just achieved by adding more labor, but also by bringing more workers, but also by higher productivity and efficiency gains. And that's pretty obvious. But what that tells me is that this is a city center redevelopment model that is more increasingly explained to this idea that we have in geography called, or economics called, relative surplus value. And so what that basically means is that by reorganizing space, technology, and production processes, you can boost productivity, you can boost value, you can boost efficiency gains. And so this is where one scholar by the name of David Harvey, who's an urban geographer, and his ideas I'm going to reference a few times tonight, he becomes pretty useful because he will argue that under capitalism, capital itself must constantly find new profitable outlets for investment. But one of the major ways it does that is through the built environment of cities themselves, through offices, infrastructure, redevelopment, and urban transformation. And he calls this the spatial fix, and it's part of what's known as the second circuit of capital. Once you invest in the production process, if you have leftover surplus capital, you can invest it in things that help that production process, infrastructure, and that's what cities are. But he's going to argue, most scholars would argue, who also build off him, that this process is never stable. And so the built environment that becomes one era's solutions may actually become an obstacle for the next era. In other words, infrastructures become inadequate, buildings become outdated, safety standards change, communication systems evolve. Even now, in the Tenjin Big Bang logic, you see this idea of earthquake resistance. And even in these buildings, they're being designed with pandemic resistance measures included. And so this whole idea of resilience then becomes economically valuable. And I think this is what the Tenjin Big Bang really represents. And this is kind of the yen number for that. And so it's not just beautification, but it's an example that the sort of periodic reconstruction of the urban core must take place so that it can continue to absorb capital, remain competitive.
And be relevant.
Exactly.
Relevant to the circumstances.
Right.
Like you mentioned pandemic, and of course, earthquakes, natural disasters were all very much on our mind here in Japan.
Yeah.
Okay, Sam, we're gonna have to move on. Evan, your next what other story caught your eye?
Heisei Chikuho Railway. Yeah, my analysis is going to be way less academic than Sam's, I'm afraid. I was going to do the hovercraft story because hovercraft are so cool, but this one is slightly more important than that. The Heisei Chikuho Railway, it's first of all, this closure of the railway system is not happening straight away. It's happening at some time in the near future, so you still have a chance to go there if you want, which you really should do because some of the stations on this line are gorgeous. Like if you have the image of like a little unmanned platform surrounded by rice fields. There's that kind of stations. They're really lovely. So basically, this is 3 lines, the main line of which goes from Yukuhashi, up in the sort of northeast of Kyushu, around the Hiraudai Mountains to Nogata, And so usually you go around the other side of those mountains to get to Kyushu. This is the sort of countryside side of that. It's a lovely, lovely area. And it's originally coal mining tracks that were then, in 1989, after the closure of the coal mines, they were switched over to passenger rail. And it did quite well for a while. But as Nick said, the number of riders has continued falling until in 2023, it was a third of the peak. Even while other lines in Japan have gotten really busy at the same time, they blame declining birth rates and what they call motorization, which I guess means the movement to cars. And they're not wrong about those things, I think. But it's also fair to say that part of the reason for the movement to cars is because this train, it travels on the main track, it goes 45 kilometers, and it does it in 1 hour 50 minutes.
Slow.
Yeah, it goes about 25 kilometers an hour on average, which that's like a fast cycle. Yeah. So, no, it's a lovely tourist ride.
It is. And just to tag on to that, while it's still running, there's something called the Koto Densha, ne? And it's a gorgeous, maybe it's a 2-3 car. I was just on that a couple weeks ago, but it's a gorgeous tourist train that's still running now. Highly recommend it.
You do still have a chance to go in this. It's a symptom of the managed decline of Japan, of Japanese services in the rural areas as the population becomes more urban. And I think that we'll start to see a lot more of this sort of thing in the future as it becomes unfeasible to provide services to the country.
And then they're not just going to, but if they stop it, they're going to probably pave over and run buses on it.
Are they going to pave over the tracks
I believe
themselves?
That, yes.
Really?
We'll talk about that later. Okay. Sam, you have one more?
Yes, the foreign trainees passed the nursing exam in Fukuoka. Awesome. Okay, so for me, this is a very interesting case of what scholars call arrival, and that's the process of typically migrants, not necessarily international migrants, just coming in and undergoing just a lot of different processes to become settled in one area and build a life. And so this is specifically this whole nurse training program that they've set up is an example of what's called arrival infrastructure. And so loosely defined, arrival infrastructure are those parts of the urban fabric upon which newcomers kind of become entangled and through which they kind of negotiate and produce their futures and their mobilities and how they're going to move and be translocal. And so this is not a chaotic or informal gateway in the sense of like an arrival city, if you're familiar with the work of Doug Saunders. But this is more of a highly organized, state-supported, multi-stage pathway that supports language training, qualifications, qualification building, schooling, and then eventually employment. And so in that sense, Fukuoka City is not just receiving workers, but it's Fukuoka Prefecture is not just receiving workers, but it's building the infrastructure through which arrival then becomes possible. And so what's striking to me, though, is that this is happening in Omuta City. This is kind of the locus of these individuals here, of these young women, and not necessarily a big core city like Fukuoka. And so that's important because a lot of the literature on arrival will kind of challenge our sort of one way, one place concept of migration. A lot of times people are going into multiple different areas. They navigate their lives and relationships across their homes and their new homes. And 90,000. So this article alludes to the need that 90,000 nurses are going to be needed in the prefecture by 2040. And so that's a huge number to recruit in under 20 years. And so I think if Fukuoka and Japan more broadly want to remain attractive or competitive in attracting skilled labor, cared labor, the question is not just how to bring people in or who to bring it in, but it's how do you want to create stable platforms that recognize that they're not just going to build lives here, but they're going to continue relationships and lives from their home as well. And so the more friction there is for people to do that, whether that be like sending remittances home or the ability to go travel and see their family or even bring family here, then that will reduce the competitive advantage of a place like Fukuoka or Japan in general compared to maybe some other highly urbanized context. So reduce the friction for arrival, and then you'll be able to recruit more highly skilled labor.
All right. Let's open up the floor. Anyone have any comments on any of these news stories that we've talked about so far?
Hi, my name's Carl. I'm originally from New York City. I work in the Fukuoka City Hall as a CIR or coordinator for international relations. I'll keep it quick like that. So the story I was interested in is, because I think it kind of does the best job of condensing what I think all of these are kind of leaning into, is the story about the 1.8 trillion yen. Oh. And the reason why I say this is because that's a number, right? And all of these different articles kind of reflect an ongoing change that's happening here. Like, what is this number for? Who's it for? If the Fukuoka that people loved was something that was existing before all this redevelopment, and this is meant to be a good thing, it just reflects an ongoing shift in what the city's identity might be and how people understand it. And you can see this running through all of the articles that are here, whether it's the Chikuho line, the need to train people, foreign and labor shortages. All of these things are saying like, well, what's the upshot? And here's something that is a concrete number, but what does that concrete number mean? And that's not something I can answer right off.
Anything else? Okay, about Patrick?
Yes, I'm Patrick from Poland. Hello. I wanted to comment on the first article about the housing support. So we had something very similar in Poland. I mean, the mechanism was a bit different, but in principle, it was the same. So basically pumping empty money into the market. So shouldn't we be afraid that this money will eventually raise both prices of rent and purchase, because that's what happened in Poland after they introduced it and they had to recall it very, very quickly.
Does anyone want to tag onto that?
I'm Simon from Germany. So on this Umuta story with the nurses, so I've not fact-checked that yet, but a friend of mine, she is actually a nurse from Umuta. She told me that Umuta is famous for nursing schools. And this has a historic context because Omuta previously was a coal mining hub in Japan. And so this industry obviously had some incidents, some health problems that followed. So that's why the system of nursing school built up in Omuta. And maybe that's why today it's still in use for foreigners who got trained there and maybe then later be sent also to Fukuoka City.
Interesting.
My name's Matthew from the United States. I'm actually an English teacher at a nursing university. To join on to the talk about Omuta, the same programs are happening here in Fukuoka City as well. Kinen Byoin has accepted every year maybe a dozen candidates and has trained them. I've interviewed and worked with a few of them. Unfortunately, they often just leave very quickly afterwards. It's very tough to work it's tough to get qualified to work in Japan, even if you have a qualification from your home country. The language is difficult. There's some discrimination from colleagues and then from patients as well. And then the pay is very poor. So, yeah. So it's a tough one to fill with foreign candidates.
Yeah, can I respond, Nick?
Sure.
That's very right. That's very true. It's extremely tough. And so that goes back to the idea of frictions, especially for a place like Japan. It has a lot of livability, but there's a lot of barriers to be able to start to enjoy that. But one of the concepts that goes into this whole idea of arrival and arrival infrastructures is that the individuals who are putting themselves in this are willing to undergo a lot of stress and pressure and so on, because being able to either increase their own future career prospects probably has implications for their family as well. And so they're probably first or second generation, probably second generation of people who have worked really hard to urbanize and give their daughters or their children an opportunity for education, and that opportunity is making itself here. So despite the difficulties, and I don't know what the loss numbers are, but despite the difficulties, a lot of people are going to be willing to undergo such difficult conditions.
Okay, thanks. On another topic or tagging on, either is okay. All right, Matt. Marcus. Yeah. Marcus says, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Marcus from Canada, and I'm just tagging along for this issue. So, no, I don't think it's just like a Japan central issue, but nursing in general is like a very high burnout industry. And so even if trainees decide to come to Japan and, you pile on the language barrier, you pile on the high stress, the discrimination, as someone pointed out. So I think it's really hard to, keep nurses in general. I personally know a few Japanese nurses who have left the industry within 5 years. I think, and, for Japanese women, when they give birth to children, like they're going to leave anyway. And very few of them are willing to return because it's just a super high pressure industry. So, and the low pay, the stagnant wages, everything kind of compounds, and I think it's a very hard ask for foreign trainees to keep on going. So
Yeah, sounds that way. Is that Tyler? Is that Tyler? Yes.
Hello. Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm from the U.S. I just wanted to add on to that. My girlfriend is actually Japanese, and she's a nurse, and pretty much all of her friends are nurses. And the same thing exactly happened. She's about 4 years into nursing, and two of her friends have already quit and don't want to change fields because of the burnout. And she now is thinking about changing fields away from it just because even though it's a good hospital and comparatively to Japanese jobs, it's pretty tough. And then you have the strict hierarchy of hospitals, a very old-fashioned style, and it leads to a lot of tensions with senpais and teach higher doctors. But so
I'm starting to get concerned.
it's rough.
It is. Yeah, Lori.
Hello, I'm Laurie. I'm a software engineer. I wanted to talk about the bus, train turning into a bus. So these kind of transport issues are cropping up in lots of places. I've seen in the UK turning old railway lines into guided busways and things like that. And there's a lot of really creative, interesting solutions. I think the tech is there for lots of good solutions. One is on-call buses that don't follow fixed routes, but you can call them up so you can cover greater areas with fewer drivers. And we see the kind of driver shortage a lot. But while the tech solutions are there, maybe the legislation, the law won't allow a bus route to change that frequently and things like that. So I think we're going to see this pattern more and more where maybe there are solutions, but they need the will to push them through. And hopefully maybe these kind of situations will help push that through.
I just attended a presentation by someone from Nishi Tetsu, and they actually are testing that on-call system of smaller buses that people use. It's like Uber in a way. And then somehow they use AI to prioritize in an efficient way how they pick up. And they've done all the math on it. And it's much, much cheaper than running the big buses.
Far more efficient.
And more people get to where they need to. So that's going to come to Fukuoka very soon. And then
When?
I didn't hear that. I think,
If
I
you're
think
curious
it's
how-
being tested.
If you're curious how it works, go to the Kyushu University campus. We have that. That takes students all around.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And I was just on, it's a Hita-Hiko-san, Hita-Hiko-san, whatever, line just a couple of days ago, actually. And because of the heavy rains and landslides a few years ago, they've paved over 14 kilometers of the route of the rail has been paved over. And it's just a single, like a road lane, and going through tunnels as well too. And they have railway crosses and all that, but it's only open to buses. They're running small micro buses, and it was good. Looked good to me. Fine. So yeah, creative solutions. Anything else from these news scans? Anyone?
I'm Aidan. I'm a freelance designer in Fukuoka. Nice to meet you guys.
And you're way back there.
I know. I couldn't find a good seat, and these ones are taken.
Okay.
Passive aggressive as hell. But no, I was going to say about the housing support. It doesn't actually apply to every single area. So if you want to find a really nice house in Ropponmatsu or Yakuin, you're going to have to be a wealthy lady or gentleman.
Interesting.
Yeah, just so you know.
Does anyone have any info on that? Which areas?
There's about 15 school catchment areas that are excluded. The full list is available on the Fukuoka City's informational website about this program. Yes, definitely have a look. And the only exclusion to the exclusion is that if you already live in one of those areas and you're moving within that same area, you can still get the funding.
Wow, interesting. It's quite flexible. Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we're going to move on to the main story. Fukuoka is still one of the few cities in Fukuoka that's growing. People are moving here, companies are investing, development is accelerating. And for many years, there's been kind of unspoken deal about Fukuoka. You could build a good life here with a lower cost of living in Tokyo, shorter commutes, easier access to nature, and a sense of balance that's hard to find in other cities. and foreigners are made to feel welcome. But that experience might be changing for some. Costs are rising, especially housing. The city is getting denser, traffic is getting worse, and for some people, day-to-day life feels less easy than it used to. At the same time, opportunities are expanding. There are more companies, more projects, more international connections, and so we find ourselves at an interesting point. So, is Fukuoka still delivering that so-called promise? And we're not tonight trying to come up. There is no single answer, so that's what we're after here. We're after an exchange of ideas and opinions. So why don't we first give each of our panelists 5 minutes each, and then we're going to open it up to you guys again. Okay, so we're going to start with, I think we're starting with Evan.
Yep.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
No more than 5 minutes.
I can do well under 5 minutes.
You can do okay. All right. Surprise us.
So I've been in Fukuoka now for 26 years. Nick's been here longer than me, but I'll catch up one day.
Are you insinuating I'm going to die? Yeah. Without nursing and yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, when Nick asked me to be on the panel for this, I told him that I'm not sure I would have a good opinion about this because all of my most controversial opinions are that everything is great and we should all be really happy about our lives. But looking into it in a little bit more detail, there are, yes, some things that have changed for the negative over the 25 years that I've been here, 26 years. Since 2000, the population has grown by about 300,000 people, which is roughly 20% increase. It's quite a large increase, yeah. However, on the flip side of that, the projections for Fukuoka City are that it will grow only 4% more, and that by 2040 we'll hit the peak. And then after that, we start the decline that everywhere else in Japan has already started feeling. So what this means is that we're ahead of the curve in population growth, and as a result, we're slightly behind the curve in services catching up to that. Now, Fukuoka City has done quite well in provision of new services, I think. The Mayor Takashima has been very proactive in increasing, of course, with the Big Bang project and the Hakata Connected, in increasing office space and these sort of things within the city, but also in policies such as the Tokku, the special economic... Yeah, that one. Yeah. Thank you. Special economic designation that allows relaxation of some restrictions. And then also policies such as the housing support that are designed to make it easier for young families. So the increase in the Fukuoka City population is caused by a few things. Part of it is the policy of the city. There's been an active policy of growth, which has been very successful in ways that most of the rest of Japan, apart from Tokyo, hasn't had. Fukuoka is also, of course, it's the... not the black hole, what would you say? The center of gravity for Kyushu, meaning that as urbanization continues, young people move here. And then it's always historically also had a very strong education network, which means a lot of universities, so that young people move here for university, and then a good proportion of those end up staying, which results in the young population that Fukuoka has now. However, yes, as you say, that has started to cause some problems. One of those is that land prices have increased. In the last roughly 10 years, land prices have roughly doubled, which is the number one growth rate in Japan. That's residential land prices. And in Chuo Ward, where we are now, and Hakata Ward, in the last 10 years, the land prices are increased by 150%. It's a massive increase.
In the last year, right?
150% over the last 10 years. Oh, yeah. And so... related to that, then rents, of course, are going up. In 2024, the rent increase for the average family type was 11% in a year, which is the number one in Japan. Now, of course, this applies to people who are moving house. It doesn't apply to people who stay in the same house. Show of hands, has anybody here who's in a rental in Japan had their rent raised? Okay, there's quite a few. Oh, really? Okay, it is happening.
It will happen in November.
All right, I see. It's never happened to me yet, but I'm sorry that is happening. Okay, this may be the start of a new trend. Yeah, it was mostly unknown for the last probably 30 years. Yeah, and in fact, I've had my rent go down in an apartment that I was living in. Yeah, but yeah, we're in new days now. And so, as we say, it's cheaper than Tokyo's. In general, still roughly 40% cheaper than Tokyo, but that gap is narrowing a bit. And redevelopment, the Tenjin Big Bang and the Hakata Connected are contributing to what is the highest construction growth rate in Japan, which again is policy-driven growth. And you know, of course, this is good for jobs, but one very negative aspect of that is that the green space in the city has massively decreased. It's hard to tell on a day-to-day basis because you know they don't cut off bits of the big parks, but small green spaces have been disappearing, such that I don't have absolutely recent figures, but from about 1985 to 2005, over those 20 years, the city lost 5%. No,
Really?
the city's green space went from 26% to 21%.
Wow.
So it lost 5 percentage points, which is 20% of the green space.
Yeah,
It's a massive number.
any loss is
Wrong
direction.
And we have to assume that that's continued over the almost 20 years since then. In terms of traffic, it's a mixed bag. I researched the last 20 years of traffic at the intersection right here just to see what was happening. And it's actually down by 1/3 from its peak. Peak was in 2012. It's now 65% of the peak. So it's gotten much better around Tenjin. And that's partly because of the increase in the transportation infrastructure in general. The city expressways, the subway trains, etc. However, it also means that traffic has moved to the suburbs. It's getting harder to drive outside of the central area. And the number of people using Hakata Station is up by 40% in the last 10 years. Now, this is all contributing to, as Nick slightly alluded to, that Japanese people are starting to find a little more unwelcome the number of foreigners in Japan. While that doesn't apply to most of us, while we aren't tourists in most cases, the perception does apply to us in daily relationships and in life. 54% of Fukuoka City residents found the tourist surge unwelcome, which is compared with, in Kagoshima, 67% said it was welcome. And so, you know, of course, this is because the relative numbers of tourists are different, but it has an effect on the perception of foreigners in Fukuoka. It bleeds over to us and our daily lives. So now, as I say, I started off with the feeling that everything is great, but it is somewhat more of a mixed bag. And so if possible, I'd like to pass over to Sam for an academic analysis.
All right.
Thank you, Evan. That was very well said. I can actually cut a few things off of what I'm going to share tonight, which is helpful because I tend to go over. In the same time, I'm going to try to remain coherent by cutting stuff out on the fly. So, so we're holding growth and livability in tension with one another because we're starting to feel those tensions, right? And when we ask, like, has the deal changed? I'm guessing by deal we mean, like, come to Fukuoka, build your life here, because it offers a very livable urban environment. And so my specific answer to that question would be no, the deal has not fundamentally changed, but we may need to re-examine the fine print to what growth actually means. And Fukuoka has long pursued growth, and growth, for better or worse, is just going to be built into the logic of cities in capitalist contexts like ours. And the mode of economic production has profound implications for how cities are going to be shaped and how they're going to be formed. And so I would say, like, we're just entering into a new phase of growth. I can describe more what that looks like, but it's going to be like intensified, entrepreneurial, redevelopment based, all that kind of stuff. And in 1961, Fukuoka was the first city in Japan to publish a master plan, like an urban plan. And the goal of that plan was to grow by bringing industry here to the city and build up the port and the coastal zones as industry sectors, as industry centers. Now, a number of things actually made that unfeasible. So about 5 years later, they published a second master plan, and they wanted to focus on civic well-being and livability while growing, but through softer tertiary sectors, through commerce, and through becoming a regional centrality. And Mayor Takashima has gone on record. So Fukuoka has grown through various models over the years. We're now into the more like redevelopment and startup economy model of growth. But the mayor has gone on record several times saying that he wants to use both the accelerator and the brake pedals of growth strategically with a delicate balance to achieve the growth before we hit that anticipated population decline that Evan alluded to. And so I think if we're feeling a livability crunch, it's because we're hitting that accelerator pedal right now. And so that's hard to do, right? Because you have to manage the consequences of growth while also trying to attract the agents that drive growth. And so I think, the question is, are they doing that smoothly? And I do think they're trying. But moving more into the theoretical to think of cities in more like broad and abstract terms. So a lot of scholars would say we should stop thinking of cities as single bounded entities and more as ongoing processes of economic and social relations. And so that takes a brain shift because we're so used to thinking about cities kind of ontologically, as in like they kind of have their own existences, but they're really nothing more than a network of relations, and that network for a city like Fukuoka is becoming much more global. And I'm going to shift my page here from the notes, but I can go back to David Harvey again, and he has a lot of ideas as an urban geographer that powerfully explain kind of this logic of cities. And scholars have been referencing his work for decades now. So if you read anything on geography about cities and the urban environment, Harvey's going to be one of those citations. But he would see cities are primarily, but not exclusively, built up and organized around the processes of production and capital accumulation. And so in simple terms, what that means is wealth becomes more wealth when goods or services are produced and sold for more value that went into them, and then the profits are reinvested again into that production process. And so this is the basic driver of economic growth, right? And that extra value will come from labor, but this process doesn't just have to be like factories and manufacturing. It can be digital, it can be commercial, a lot of those things that we see happening here in Fukuoka City. And so the built environment, whether the production process is material or immaterial, material or digital, serves as an infrastructure for that process. In fact, you can consider it as the infrastructure for production. And so you have offices where people work, workshops where people fabricate, you have the warehouses for staging and shipping of goods, and kind of in between you have the places where people live and sleep and raise their families. And so, but in addition to, here's the key for Fukuoka. So in addition to production infrastructure, the built environment serves as a profitable investment for surplus capital. And this is what he calls the spatial fix. And you can kind of Google this term. It's pretty cool. It's pretty, very powerfully explains a lot of phenomenon. So that means you can invest in roads, you can invest in transportation networks, ports, office buildings, urban development projects, urban landscape transformations. Sound familiar, right? And when you do that, that's a safe place for your money to land and hopefully, ideally, grow in value. And so that has implications for cities because the city revenue is attached to land value, right? And so when you're investing, when capital then becomes invested into the built environment, they call this the second circuit of capital. The first is that production process. The second is now we're going to support the infrastructure. And so there are two, and so all this kind of increases the value of land, rent prices, right? The exchange value land is not just for living, but a lot of people see it as a means for making money. This is true in the United States, where you buy a home, it appreciates in value, and you can collect off that appreciation. But there are two basic ways to increase value. One is through absolute means, and that basically just means you expand the quantity of something. And then the other is through relative means. And that means you make a process, you increase value by intensifying its use, by making it more efficient relative to other possibilities. And so by analogy, cities do the same thing with land. And so since fiscal revenue is bound up with land value, they can actually produce more urban space or intensify the use of space that already exists. And so the whole process of production benefits from that because now there's more space or there's more places that can absorb that surplus capital. So very quickly, as I end, can anyone tell me where in recent history Fukuoka has increased the value of its land holdings by absolute means, by increasing the urban space that's available to it? Yes.
Momochi.
Yes, the great land reclamation project of the Yokotobe area, but also there's Island City, right?
Island City.
Right, okay, so there's absolute space. Fukuoka is limited on the space that I can now grow, right? We've got mountains that way, we've got an ocean this way, and Hakata Bay is a concave semicircle. So the farther you build out in the one way, the more you get into the shipping lanes, right? So places like Tenjin or Hakata are very different. Space here is intensifying. They're increasing the productive output of the land because if you can concentrate intense growth in certain areas, the city hopes that it can increase its livability for the city as a whole. But in these areas, you're going to feel that livability crunch. You're going to feel those pressures.
Okay.
That's probably five sentences.
That was a lot. Great. Thank you very much for that. So let's open the floor here and hear about your experiences. Is the deal still the same? Is it as good as it was a few years ago? Are you happy that you moved here? Who wants to start?
I'm Kyle. I'm an engineer working at a solar company here. I've only been here for about 4 years, so for me, I haven't really felt too much of a change. It has felt very livable for all the time that I've been here. Rent hasn't been too major of a concern for me, and I like the balance that I have, being able to engage in a lot of urban life, but also still having nature close at hand. But I am curious to hear, for people who have been here longer or have come here from other places in Japan, kind of what their feeling is about how things might have changed.
Yeah, sure. Good. Who wants to reply to that, to Kyle's? Who's lived elsewhere outside of Fukuoka? All right. Is it Matthew?
So I lived in Hiroshima for 10 years before moving here, and I've lived here for about 12 now. Hiroshima was the perfect size for me, flat, easily bikeable, but I was also single. So I think that colored my feelings. So around 2006, I thought, I'm going to live in Japan forever. I kind of felt like very welcomed by the people of Hiroshima. I had nice connections there, but my wife was from Fukuoka, so I moved here. At first, I didn't like it. Too big, too many people. I moved to my wife's neighborhood, which used to have a college feel to it, with like dormitories, like private dormitories. If I keep on talking, you'll figure it out. And has been redeveloped to a very wealthy neighborhood. So the feeling is completely different from what she grew up with. So over the last 12 years, I've just kind of watched her become really sad at what's happened in Fukuoka, because it doesn't feel like the Fukuoka she grew up with, especially Tenjin. Like the loss of IMSS. IMSS was such a beautiful building with such character. And the way that I look at it, I travel for conferences quite often, and Fukuoka doesn't feel much different now from Nagoya or Osaka. It's just another generic business town. And I'm kind of disappointed at that. But I still feel it's a nice size. It's livable. But the pinch of gradual price increases.
Not going in the right direction.
It's just not going. Yeah, it's not going in the right direction for us. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm Alan from LA. I've been here most of my life. And just today with a friend, we rode out to Skanoshima. And I got more smiles, waves, and hellos than I have in the city this whole year so far. So the feeling of what Fukuoka used to be is still there, but outside of the city proper.
Okay. Yeah. Good comment. I personally agree with that. Who else has something to add?
Thank you. I'm Andres from Ecuador. And yeah, I used to live in Tokyo for 8 years, and I just moved to Fukuoka very recently in November last year. So it's been 6 months that have gone pretty fast. But for me, the change from living in Tokyo in the suburbs to Fukuoka around Tenjin, it's been very radical, because what I was looking for was a higher quality of living, less time spent on commute or on trains, and less time with crowds. And for me, moving to Fukuoka was exactly what I was looking for. So the change in my quality of life, at least so far, has been way up than I was expecting. But I was also interested in this story because I also wonder for how long can this be, right? Because I've also heard from many people in Tokyo who are considering Fukuoka as an option, especially now that crowds are getting more intense in Tokyo and also rents getting higher. So I see many people having interest in Fukuoka, and I also wonder for how long this livable city can continue being this way.
Too much success isn't always a good thing, is it? Any other experiences?
So I'm Christina. I'm from Sweden. I used to live in Chiba Prefecture before I moved here. And I lived there for 17 years and nothing happened. So it was sad to see that people didn't care for their environment or didn't have the power to influence. Here I see a lot of change. I've been here for 12 years now, but the change is ongoing forever. And it's nice to see the investment and the pride and the modern part of the city at the same time as I start to miss things that are gone. So it's with mixed feelings.
Stephen Lyman. I moved here from New York City. So for me, cost of living dropped precipitously. I've been here now for almost 8 years, and I've actually watched the affordability of housing shift in the wrong direction. I started looking in 2022, and as soon as the country reopened tourism in October, housing prices went up. For the kinds of apartments I was looking for, went up about 50% overnight. All of the inventory was gone. When it came back on the market, it had gone up about 50% in that one moment. So affordability, I think, is increasingly becoming a concern. Living in New York, I understand like change is inevitable, and the New York City that I moved to and fell in love with in 2002 no longer exists. It's just become super whitewashed corporate. It doesn't have the character that it used to. I'm seeing a little bit of that in this urban development around, especially Tenjin. I used to come here and hang out. I don't anymore. It's not as interesting. Of course, I've also found other neighborhoods in the city that are a lot of fun and have that character that I'm looking for. But I do worry about the affordability of housing. And then I know that there's some talk about changes in who's allowed to buy apartments in Japan, and what that's going to do to housing prices if and when those laws change. So I don't know if our panelists have any comments on that.
Are you talking about the Asakura story? Asakura?
I don't know about that particular.
No, okay, all right. Let's not open that can.
I'll just say that the luxury tower near where I live.
Okay.
Half those units are empty all the time.
Okay.
They're purchased for.
They're investment only.
Yeah.
Investment only purchases, driving the cost up. Okay. Thanks. Interesting comment. Anyone else?
Marcus here again. So I'd say like the point, so I moved directly from Canada to Japan, and Fukuoka is the only city that I've lived in. Hi, Evan. And so the points that like I fell in love with Fukuoka, they all remain the same, like the compact size, the proximity to nature, all those things remain the same. And so like Evan, I think like I cannot complain about that. But on the other hand, I've noticed a big shift, and I'm sure the rest of the world, including Japan, like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, like a lot of things changed. People's attitudes changed as well. In terms of affordability, I feel, so we were fortunate to purchase housing pre-pandemic, and my wife and I felt it was quite affordable, but post-pandemic, a lot of our social circle, they were just completely priced out. And they just gave up, actually. So they continue renting. They had plans to buy, but a lot of those things, the plans completely fell apart after the pandemic.
So my name is Travis, and I just moved here about a month ago, and I moved directly from the U.S. So anyway, and I came here as an engineer, as a software engineer, and I had another offer in Tokyo as well. You know, the salary was a little bit higher, but then when I started to, like when I'd been in Tokyo, you know, if you want to go to like visit your friends or go to a social activity or just commuting, you could spend an hour on a crowded, you know, sweaty train, that sort of thing. And so versus the, you know, with like versus here where I can walk from my apartment to my workplace, and you know it's very centralized. You know, the nightlife and the business districts, right? And so I think that was appealing to me. As opposed to Tokyo for, kind of a higher quality of life. And like everyone was saying, like closer access to nature. And so, I'm glad I came here so far.
Happy so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Richard. I'm from Kentucky in the United States. My problem is not as much as y'all's. My problem, I used to live in Okinawa and move into Fukuoka. The experience I have is more of prejudice. I've never been stopped by the police so many times driving in my car, been searched for weapons. So that's the experiences I have here.
And
do you actually have weapons?
I'm a weapon.
Okay, Laurie.
We're talking about housing affordability a lot, but on the topic of things like prejudice, I remember moving 10, 12 years ago and it being relatively easy to find a place. And then a couple of years ago, I felt like it's kind of harder to find a place. But it's something you do so infrequently, you don't really know. And I would love to hear from anyone who has industry experience or statistics about how many properties are just no foreigners? Because it felt like a lot last time I looked for a place.
Anyone have any recent experiences? Anyone?
Oh, hey. I moved here about a year ago, and yeah, I had to move twice so far. And basically, the second time I moved, I went to a real estate agent, and I spent about 3 hours, 4 hours, and the real estate agent calling 30, 40 apartments, asking if foreigners are allowed, and all of them are no.
Wow.
And so I only ended up with like 3 options in most of the city in my timeline. So it was really tricky to find a place that I actually liked.
And what you heard, it was just no foreigners?
Oh, yeah.
Or was
They just asked,
did they ask you to speak Japanese? Was there any conversation?
The agent was just like, American Jin, ii desu ka? I'm like, no foreigners. Not even mentioning Japanese proficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get married.
I'm working on that now.
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm from Romania. I want to say, like, we had a similar problem with the house. We just moved here recently, and we went to an agency. We showed them this house that we wanted. They called, or I don't even know if they called, whatever, but they say no foreigners. So we had a booking with another agency. We went there. We spent around 3, 4, or 5 hours finding houses, showing houses, and then he shows us the house that we went to the first agency. And we say, no, they told us there's no foreigners. I'm like, let me try, because it doesn't say anywhere that there's no foreigners. And they call, they say, no, it's fine. Foreigners are okay.
Really?
And we say, okay, we don't have a guarantor. And they're like, no, it's fine. We're like, why? Why did the first agency say no foreigners when actually now
was there a difference between like telephone and face to face? Is it when
no,
you
it
actually?
was both of them were like, we went to the agency in person. They called and they say no foreigners. We went to the same, and now we live in that flat that we have wanted
And you're
on
happy?
the first time. Yes. But we are a bit confused. Like, why for the same house first you say no, and then I don't know. Maybe it's all up to the agent also. I don't know.
Yeah, don't know. Yeah, quick question. If you weren't living in Fukuoka, what's your number 2 choice? Where do you think might be better? So for people living here in Fukuoka and they're thinking, I don't know, may not be the best deal. Where else?
Yeah, I think it would be Kagoshima. So we have been there a couple of times traveling for holiday, and I think that it has this charm still. It's not overrun by foreign tourists. I think I don't know if there are many foreign residents, but it feels like it's still much more affordable than Fukuoka. Food is great. The landscape is
They have
great.
a Shinkansen.
They have Shinkansen, yeah. They also have an airport, but I think work-wise, the downside is, if you work fully remotely, then I think it's a good place. But if you have to travel frequently, then it's a bit of a hassle to get around. So, yeah, that's...
But I imagine a lot of people, there are some engineers here and people in software and working remote. Kagoshima actually does sound like a good alternative. Any other ideas? Any other?
Yeah, so I used to live countryside Hiroshima, but I think the city is similar enough to Fukuoka. It's a port city, the population's about the size. There seems to be that, I mean, you mentioned it, like it is a lovely city. You can get around with a bike, and this, sort of downtown area is about the same as Fukuoka, where you can walk around if you want. I don't know what the prices are lately, but I think they were generally about the same. Yeah, so maybe rent's a bit higher, but yeah, I think Hiroshima would have been my number 2.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, and I'm from the Philippines. I've been living in Japan for 12 years now, and I'm actually living in Saga.
Saga City?
Saga City,
And I could say that the standard of living is maybe much, much cheaper. And Fukuoka is very accessible from Saga City.
Right, when you need
we
it.
have we have trains and buses, and if you drive, you can just easily cross over the mountain and get to Fukuoka. So I'm actually happy to see that Fukuoka is growing, but maybe speaking about standard of living and those things, still kind of expensive for.
It's becoming premium.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a cost now, more of a cost.
Yeah, right. So if you want to get, some second option, so maybe cities close to Fukuoka City is maybe a good option.
I see. Okay, so enjoy the benefits of Fukuoka, but don't necessarily have to live within it. Right. Okay, well, that's, I live in Itoshima, which is a perfect example. It's like Saga's not that far away. And if we need a big hospital, if we, want to go to the ball game or whatever it is, the big shops, and you just drive in 1 hour, less than an hour. So yeah, I agree with that.
Nothing about other cities in Japan that I would like to live in, because I'm here for life, baby. But I was really surprised, shocked, and saddened to hear about discrimination against foreigners in housing and in the police. And most of the things that we've talked about today, to be honest, there's not much we can do about them. As you say, if you don't like how it is in Fukuoka, the option is to move. But it does feel like we ought to be able to do something about discrimination. I don't know what that is. I don't have an answer. But is it legal to say that an apartment is not open to foreigners? Is that just a legal thing to do?
I'm Ara, founder of Ara Home. I have some research because I'm building AI-powered platform which is helping foreigners in Japan. So I did this research. There's a Kylie Kaisha and real estate agent. They think foreigners, it's illegal. I think it's not legal to say no to foreigners, but I think they found there's a risk, especially like a language barrier, and they don't know the Japanese living manner, so they don't want to take risk. But the problem is, even I have a brother living in Fukuoka 7 years, so how I managed to get the house is through his visa. I got the founder visa, which is a Toku visa, but I was not able to find any mansion because it's 6 months. Nobody allowed, and I'm foreigners, so I have to explain everything. But they're still asking for guaranteeing company and also guarantor. So how can I find the guarantor if I just arrive? So I'm in a conversation like how I can appreciate this landlord and a real estate agent. But this is the concept in Kyushu. They don't understand the foreigners, so they don't know how to solve the issues when they have a risk. So I think it's there's how we can change. This is also we are educating. We're not risk, but at the same time there's some kind of support or program that we understand the Japanese living manner. Probably they had a previous bad experience about foreign resident.
Some experiences that were shared tonight were very significant to me because people in the field that I'm working in have long kind of noticed these sort of trends. I want to talk about kind of the comparisons of Tokyo and New York and into a city like Fukuoka. So Tokyo and New York City are on the same urban hierarchy. They're this global city. But as a city like Fukuoka kind of ascends the urban hierarchy through its growth, you're going to see a lot of spatial manifestations in the city that make it look a lot like these other cities. And so we actually call this global city architecture, and it's kind of in the DNA of the Tenjin Big Bang. But the goal and the expectation is that draws in a lot of that capital I was talking about earlier, that sort of investment. So it's a specific type of design to attract a certain type of resource or a certain type of people. And so to the extent that they limit it, I agree, I think Tenjin's become a little bit more boring. It just doesn't have the same textures or the same character as it used to, because it does look like a lot of these global cities, but you still kind of find these little nooks and alleyways, like around Daimyo, for example, that are still very charming as well. So that's actually really interesting. So you talked about you're moving from Tokyo to Fukuoka. That's a step down on the urban hierarchy. So you're kind of living in a lot of these livability gains, so to speak. But someone, for your experience, who compares it to New York City as well, you're seeing the city, Fukuoka City, kind of try to ascend that ladder a little bit, so it's taking on a form that's much more similar to some of these other cities, so that it can compete with them. What I will say, though, is Fukuoka City cannot, for many structural reasons, compete with a city like Tokyo or New York. There's just not enough space. There's not enough fresh water. So I don't know what that would look like spatially or price-wise. We may see more rent rises. Costs may increase as the demand for people, as demand by people who want to live here increases. But in terms of kind of just this vast, just complete overwhelming transformation to make it look like a Tokyo or a New York, I don't think that'll ever happen. I never say never, but I don't think it will.
Interesting. Carl?
Now, this is more a question of mine, and not a question. It's like I remember last session we talked about how there's this new system for allowing people from Kyushu to be able to come here easier to work with
Subsidized transportation.
Yes, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it seems like as Fukuoka increases in size, and it seems like it's going to be a consequence that these other cities are going to become like part of its center of gravity, whether it be Saga City, whether it be Kyushu, and it seems like, I don't know if this is what's going to be the case necessarily, but those kinds of operations are going to increase in order to support this. Because as you were saying, Fukuoka doesn't have the size or the capacity to become this universal city in a sense. But in a way, it's going to develop satellites in order to kind of offload that pressure.
Sure.
Yeah. So
we see Kyushu seems to be turning on the engines, as it were. There's lots of development there, and it's starting to pick up.
Well, Kyushu is an industrial city, and Fukuoka is not, so that's going to make things look a lot different. But you're absolutely right in terms of like these peripheral cities or these other cities, these other nodes kind of in the center of gravity. That's the relationship between cities like that has long been documented, and so I think you're absolutely right.
So it's an opportunity for those other cities.
Right, and you'll see the daytime population grow and the nighttime population shrink.
Oh, interesting.
Well, hello everyone. So I'm Bastien from France. I'm a second-year student, a master's student at Kyushu University. So, well, I kind of have a subject tonight, but I mean...
Yep. Okay, we're on to part 3. Let's voices from the room.
All right.
Okay, here you go. Number 1 batter.
Because, well, if I wanted to answer the subject, to answer the question about like has the deals changed about attracting people of Fukuoka or whatever, I would be rephrasing the question into scratch that. So I don't think that is the deal that is changing. I believe it is becoming kind of more selective in a way. Why I'm saying that is because, unlike a lot of people here, I've been in Japan only for 4 years, so I don't have that long experience. But from what I heard first from my country, then coming to Japan, but also in these 4 years, is that I feel like it's becoming harder to be able to be allowed to stay in Japan in some way.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember, before entering Kyushu University, I studied 2 years at the Japanese language school to learn the language. And everyone says it's very easy to get the visa student to enter Japanese. It's very easy to enter, it's very hard to stay. Because you need the motivation, but you need to prove yourself, basically. Like I remember, for example, I have the example of my partner. We met at the Japanese school, we have the same background and everything, but she went the path of kaigo, like elderly care, for example, and she studied 2 years at the Senmon Gakko, at a vocational school, for kaigo and everything. And getting a visa, she gets, after graduation, she gets let's call it a temporary visa, where she's allowed to work, but again, there's some kind of limitation and whatnot. But to be able to become the true, I don't know the English name for that job. Well, Japanese is a kaigo fukushishi, is basically like a specialist in elderly care. And getting well, there is a test. You have to pass a test to be able to obtain that visa, basically. And passing that test is a hell of a challenge. Trust me, because first, there is no, like, you cannot take that test in English or anything. It has to be in Japanese. You have to take it with Japanese people. But also, those questions are insane. I was like, she was studying, you know, like we were having dinner and she was watching like some videos on YouTube to learn to study. Those questions are insane. Like I'm confident even Japanese people don't know the answer. And so she passed like, for example, I remember like going to the test center with her like for the test day, and I was shocked by the amount of foreigners that were actually trying to take the test. From what I heard, so again, I don't have the exact numbers or anything, but foreigners and Japanese people included, I think the passing rate of the test is below 20%. And not only that, like for example, so again, so I don't have like the exact proof again, but it's just like rumors that I heard. But like, for example, now I heard that getting like let's say the easiest work visa these days is you are required to obtain like the GLPT certification, like at least N2 level. Again, so there are some like workarounds and whatnot, but all those rumors, like from whatever, like the government or anything, it makes me feel like now it's like Japan is becoming a bit more like selective of the people that are allowed to stay. Selective. Yeah, like if you want to stay, you have to prove that you respect Japan, like you want to stay. It's not like I want to Japan because I like anime, or you know, it's like
yeah, it's becoming more selective. Okay.
Right.
Fine. Yeah.
That's from my experience.
A question for the room. Who here has been caught for a cycling infraction in the past month? Is anyone
in this month?
Yeah, in this month. New.
Oh, let's hear the story.
And one more question.
Okay.
Who rides a bike has actually done a hand signal? Because I've never seen anyone do one. But I think it's maybe a topic for another time.
It is,
but the new rules is a really interesting topic.
Pete Levin, I've been here for 8 years. Fukuoka Now, I'm sure, did a article on the bike chain. Yeah.
Yes.
So, my infraction was going up a one-way street the wrong way. I've been riding the same way on that street for 5 years, and you know what? I rode my bike right into a standing police officer, thinking I was doing nothing wrong. So
yeah.
So the deal has changed in that.
The deal definitely has changed for cycling in Japan.
Actually, I have one other question for the
please.
room. Just
for the room.
How many people in here are remote workers that earn income in a foreign currency? Yeah,
good question.
Just one.
No. I think there's one behind you.
Yep. Okay.
We had some people were thinking about it.
Yeah. Evan asked something earlier about rent going up, and yeah, my rent's gone up, but actually, rent in foreign currency has gone down 35%. So, that's interesting. And part of the concept of Japan being overrun by foreign traffic and maybe the type of foreigners that Japanese people don't want to see or feel differently or don't know the culture or don't follow the rules might be getting influenced by those economic influences.
How are we? Time's flying by. It's actually time to wrap up. Yeah. Why don't we begin with our closing thoughts? Evan, are you ready? It's our
thoughts on what?
on everything, on the whole evening. You've already declared your dedication to Fukuoka. You're never going to leave.
My opinion, as always, is everything is wonderful. We should all be happy.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Gosh, there's a lot that I think the field I study can speak to all of your experiences. Everything I've heard tonight is directly related to some content or material that I've been reading or wrestling with or engaging with over the past year since I came to Kyushu University. I will do a quick remark on what Bastian talked about, selectivity. Actually, that selectivity is a very crucial feature to visa and migration regimes. So who you want in and for what reasons and how difficult you are going to make it stay, that all plays a huge factor in what any sort of nation state, because that's happening at the higher government level, right? That has a huge factor in what any sort of nation state kind of envisions for itself. And let's see, on that note, for one of the reasons why I think the student visa has been so easy to get is that Japan has seen its international education opportunities as a form to develop soft power, cultural diplomacy, increase Japan's image and esteem in the minds of other people. And so I think that's why you don't see the student visa kind of extending beyond that process, because it was never an arrival infrastructure, as I talked about earlier. It was always to kind of project its image and its likability elsewhere, kind of internationally. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind here. Yeah, I guess I'll just close with that. But if you want to talk afterwards, I'll be available for a few minutes.
That's right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks. So let's have a little bit of applause for our two panelists. Did a great job. I enjoyed this evening very much. My closing thought would be, it's echoing a little bit of what everybody said here, that things are changing and they always will change. I'm happy for Fukuoka. I mean, I also miss the old Tenjin a lot, actually. I miss it. But on the other hand, there's different ways to enjoy or utilize the new Fukuoka. And for the generations to come, I think it's an exciting time. And there are other, that's why I asked, where else would you live in Kyushu if it wasn't Fukuoka? Anyways, yes, we are going to continue downstairs there's a place called Bistro Aki. And really, I think a happy hour until 10 p.m. or something. Please join us if you want to continue the conversation in a more relaxed way. Once again, thank you very much to our panelists. Also, we're going to send an email with the survey. Please fill it out. And so we're going to try and make this event even better for the next time. Thanks a lot for coming out. See you next time. Thanks.